Democrats in Congress failed to act in the best interest of Americans hardest hit by this pandemic. Amid inaction, President Trump stood up for every American who, through no fault of their own, needed relief. Politics, as usual, should find no place during this pandemic, but Democrats rejected multiple clean bills to provide relief. The American people are tired of games, they seek leadership, and President Trump deliver. The bottom line is that these actions will help Americans. President Trump is for the American people, and Democrats failed to deliver. Also, earlier this year, hundreds of Americans, working men and women at the Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA, were told that they would lose their jobs to lower-paid foreign workers imported from abroad, and then suffer the further indignity of training their foreign replacements. President Trump boldly and resolutely intervened in defense of these hardworking Americans, rallying to their case, rushing to their aid, and taking action to restore their jobs. He invited laid-off workers and their representatives to the White House, and then he fired the chairman of the board of the TVA and one other board member. President Trump offered an ultimatum. The firings would continue until the cruel and heartless decision to fire the hard-working Americans was reversed. TVA did reverse. Layoffs have been canceled and tech workers have been rehired. Yes.
Thank you. A number of Democrats, but also Republican Senator Ben Sasse, have suggested these executive actions are unconstitutional. Can you walk us through what the White House is using as a legal rationale for the president to step in here, and would you be able to share the legal opinions?
Yes, I absolutely can do that. First, I would note that what we are doing is entirely within the executive capacity of the president. On student loans, Section 2A, 2 subsection A of the Higher Education Relief Opportunities for Student Acts of 2003, which is 20 U.S.C. 1098BB, authorizes the Secretary to waive or modify provisions of student financial assistance programs to ensure that individuals who've been affected by the national emergency are not worse off financially. There's another statute for that one, Section 432 of the Higher Education Act of 1965, which gives broad authority to the Secretary. On unemployment, the Stafford Act, 42 U.S.C. 5174, says the president, after a state applies for it, can provide assistance to people who have been adversely affected by a major disaster. These are often known as other needs assistance, or ONA. On payroll tax authority, 26 U.S.C. 7508A plainly authorizes the Treasury Secretary to provide any taxpayer that has been affected by a federally declared disaster with an extension of up to a year. This was used before when the Secretary extended the individual filing deadline for 2019 taxes from April to July. And finally, for evictions, the authority would be suggesting that HHS and HUD consider whatever legal authorities they have to protect Americans. And also, the president merely instructed in that EO that we should do everything within the lawful capacity of the executive branch to protect Americans from evictions. Yes.
Thanks, Kayleigh. Back on the executive orders the president signed this weekend, as a candidate, Donald Trump criticized fairly sharply Barack Obama's use of executive orders and faulting him for failing to reach deals with members of Congress. How were the president's actions this weekend any different from President Obama's?
They're a lot different when you consider the fact that President Barack Obama utilized executive order to push forward a policy that he denied he had the right to push forward 23 times on DAPA and on DACA. He said at least 23 times, I don't have the power to do this, and then he went on to do just that. I've already listed out and enumerated the various legal authorities on the part of the president, and in terms of deal making, I would note that the CARES Act was landmark legislation, at really the height of this pandemic, that brought relief to the American people, and that was negotiated within 1 week from first drafting to enactment. And by comparison, if we want to go back to President Obama, the American Recovery Act during the Great Recession took roughly 3 months from inception to enactment as law under single-party control. This president managed to push the CARES Act through divided government, a very big accomplishment on the part of the president. What that investigation finds.
Thank you.
Yes.
2 questions, if I may. The president just tweeted that Gettysburg would be one of the 2 sites he's looking at. What can you characterize the message that he'd want to be sending with that choice, if it was that choice?
Yeah, I won't get ahead of the president as to what his convention speech will look like, but the president has done a lot to bring this country together. We've faced unprecedented challenges, and he's worked to make sure that the American people are best equipped and taken care of to rise above the challenges that we face. And he has a strong record of achievement that he'll be touting on that day.
Question on HHS and executive order. Is there no real solution then for people who may be facing eviction by the end of this month or early September?
Well, there is a solution. I've mentioned the 4 things that we've done and will continue to do, but the real solution, the holistic solution, rests with Congress and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer coming to the table. This president instructed his administration to find every single way possible that without congressional Democrats who have been unrelenting and lacking in any sort of care or empathy for the American people, at least when it comes to their negotiating tactics, if they're not going to act and care for the American people, he would. So he instructed this administration to pursue every legal avenue available to us without Chuck and Nancy, and he's done just that. And then finally, one thing I want to leave you guys with is that 18 days ago, Mayor Ted Wheeler tweeted, "What I saw last night in Portland was powerful in many ways. I listened, heard, and stood with protesters, and I saw what it means when the federal government unleashes paramilitary forces against its own people." He, in fact, called our federal agents paramilitary forces, and around this same time, our federal officers were facing rioters, barricading officers inside the courthouse, trapping officers inside, launching of commercial-grade fireworks. A federal agent's hand was impaled by planted nails. 3 officers were were at least temporarily, I should say, blinded when a laser was put in their eyes. This has been an ongoing tactic by the rioters. That was 18 days ago when Mayor Wheeler stood with the rioters and against the, quote, paramilitary forces. But just 4 days ago, it appears Mayor Wheeler had a change of heart as local officers took over the situation in Portland, and he now, I guess this is what he believes now, quote, "When you commit arson with an accelerant in an attempt to burn down a building that is occupied by people who you have intentionally trapped inside, you are not demonstrating, you are attempting to commit murder." He could not be more right about that. It is a drastic change. It took him 73 days, I suppose, to come up with that realization. And what we're seeing in Portland with 6 nights in a row, riots being declared. On Wednesday, you had some of these rioters shining lasers in officers' eyes, disable security cameras, broke windows, used boards to barricade the doors, and start a fire with 20 sworn officers and civilian employees inside. This is unacceptable, and it is encouraging to see that the liberal mayor of Portland finally seems to realize that. Thank you, everyone.